To Mr. Parks. We are not expecting Mr. Rosenall today. Mr. LeBon is going to be late, and I'm not sure of Mr. Alicone's timing, but we'd like to go ahead and begin today. Mr. Parks, if you're okay, we will do items 1 and 2 on consent. Excuse me. And then we have 3, 4, and 5, and then a special meeting. Mr. Sachs, do you wish to speak after the presentation on item 3? Okay. That option today. We could go to item number 3.
Item number 3 is a DOT report relative to a summary of results from operating the late night red line program during the 2008 holiday season.
And you know what, we might as well go ahead and take 3 and 4 together, if that, because you're both are reporting on those. So.
Okay, item number 4 is also a DOT report relative to the summary of results for operating the late night dash program during the 2008 holiday season.
Okay, well, Phil Aker from Department of Transportation. Starting out on the red line reports, as you know, the Central City Association had kicked off an idea to operate the red line during the holiday season on Friday and Saturday nights, and actually Jessica, who was
Jessica, you come sit at the table, Jessica.
had really led off an effort to raise the money to get this program started. They pulled together a little over $54,000, and it was.
Could you bring the microphone just a little bit closer? Sorry.
Sure. I'm sorry. Anyway, it was. They operated Friday and Saturday nights. From November 21st through the December 27th. Ridership was about, they did one really very careful night of ride checks, Metro did, and they had...
Hold on one second, does MTA want to come to the table too? Would you like to come up to the table? And I also saw you kind of trying to hear, so I get benefit.
Anyway, they had 1,027 riders during the period of the late night extension between the normal end of service and 3 o'clock in the morning. About 2/3 of those rode from Union Station or somewhere along the line to North Hollywood, and 372 came the other direction. They commented that some of the people were what they called round trippers, basically people trying to get out of the cold who were asleep on the trains. Based on that, actually, Metro did 4 nights of surveys, 2 pretty intensively, and 2, I guess there's some questions about the results. But based on about 1,000 riders a night, we figured that it probably pulled about 12,000 riders over the total program. I guess, you know, from a lessons learned point of view, this shows that if a public transit agency has a large fixed investment but doesn't have the operating resources to extend service, that you can work out a public-private partnership where the public transit agency uses its fixed resources and the private sector comes up with money to extend service. So I think that it's you know, it's really a good program. And Metro did a nice PowerPoint that's attached to the file that goes through in about 7 or 8 pages, the kind of the summary of the results.
Both of you like to say anything as well?
Bruce Shelburne from Metro. Yeah, we noticed on the ridership that the ridership was a little bit weaker on Thanksgiving weekend and Christmas weekend, which I guess would be expected.
Kind of expected, yeah.
But the weeks 4 and 5, the week 4 check is the one we concentrated on. The data that we looked at for week 5 was very similar to week 4, which supported the 1,000 passengers per night, which was pretty good. You know.
And Jessica, you want to say something? Then I have a couple questions.
I would. First, we'd just like to thank DOT and City Council and Metro. You should have seen the marketing materials that were put together for this program. It was really nice. They utilized the problem solution campaign, the kind of late great on the black background. It was really nice. The only qualm we have is we had very little time to use marketing campaign materials once we got them. We had about 2.5 weeks to market this program. So in our estimation, getting 1,000 riders a night on a program that really not a whole lot of people knew about is pretty phenomenal and shows a great demand for late night transit. We've kind of crunched a few numbers, and we've been working really closely with Bruce. And just to put, I have a letter from Councilmember Weezar that I won't read into the record, but just to highlight some of the things that he found was Metro's ridership in the last 3 trips of their regular Friday service averages about 543 people from 11:37 to 12:17. So that's sort of the apple that we compare our apple to. We drew about 70% of that on the Friday night that it was studied. So to be performing at 70% of an established program with a brand new program, we thought was very impressive. During the other nights, it performed anywhere between 45 and 50 to 60%, which, again, really is nothing to sneeze at considering the very short time frame that we had to work with. So we're very happy with that. In terms of the round trip issue, the folks without specific destinations, which Metro also mentioned could be just trolley jollies. They like to ride the trains, and this was an opportunity to ride the train late at night. Our round trip numbers are very similar to the numbers that they do late at night anyway, so we have no concerns there. We didn't.
So the round trip is meaning they go.
Yeah,
They just
what they'll
ride
do is
the
they'll
train.
go from one end to the other and then
Right.
turn around and go back the other way. It's essentially hoteling.
Could be
I was
folks
gonna say, but
seeking
could it
shelter.
also be if you left North Hollywood Station and you came downtown and then you went back to North Hollywood Station?
No, it would be specifically riding to the end of the line, getting off the train for the security sweep, and then getting right back on that same train and going back the other way.
And how do you identify those from the security? Is who the round trippers are? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, we can look at them at the terminals and
Okay.
pick up
So
numbers.
it's folks seeking shelter or who just want to ride the train. But our numbers were very similar to their standard numbers, so we're not very concerned about that at all. And in terms of fare box revenue, which was something Metro asked for at their board, they said, let's look at the fare box revenue. The fare box revenue we knew would be very low. You know, transit isn't a capital producing adventure for the most part. And it was very low. In the way that it was calculated, and Bruce is working with us to get some more apples to apples numbers. What was calculated in our fare box, and you'll see in the report a $450 a night fare. Well, that was single ticket, one-way only tickets purchased in the pilot hours. So if you and your husband went to dinner at 8 o'clock and bought a round-trip ticket, that wasn't captured. If someone bought a daily pass and used it at 2 in the morning, that wasn't captured. So it's really sort of a number that we need to work on a little bit and figure out maybe what Metro's normal 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. single way, one way, single ticket number is, so we can get an apples to apples, because right now we don't know that.
And so would you all describe it as, and we haven't heard the dash numbers yet, sorry, I didn't mean to, you want to go ahead and do that? Why? Sure. Before we.
The DASH program actually started the same night as the Red Line, and we ran the same Friday and Saturday nights, and we ran New Year's Eve as well. Metro has traditionally run New Year's Eve all night long, I believe.
Yes.
And so that wasn't on Jessica's dime, but, you know, our sponsors paid for New Year's Eve as well.
Well, to be fair, none of it was on my dime. It was all the...
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I said, to be fair, none of it was actually on my dime. It was all the downtown businesses. And
Yeah.
Well, and then some people were along
And
the
some-
line.
And so, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. We had started out with the idea of 2 routes, a music center, 7th Metro LA Live route, and another route that was set up to address some of the interests on the east side in the historic core. And when the effort that was really led by LA Inc. Faltered in terms of raising money, the original idea was to run the system all year long.
Right.
Anyway, Eric Richardson, who's in the audience, basically worked with Gilmore Associates, Gilmore Development, to raise about $23,000. And that was enough to support the hours from the normal end of dash service, about 6:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 buses operating on a consolidated loop, which some people found somewhat confusing. So I think if we're to do it again, we would probably go back to the dual loop with the transfer at 7th Metro. We pulled about 1,850 riders over the period of time that we ran. And it was interesting, the highest ridership night we had was the night of the old Bank District Block Party. And so I would say, as a recipe, if we could have an event every night in downtown during the holiday season, I think we could do quite well. The other thing is, of course,
Eric's smiling back there because he's going to plan that for us.
Yeah. Jim Lefton had set a deadline of the 14th of November for the sponsorship to come in, or else we would have to cancel. And actually, I think Eric got a hold of us about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday afternoon and said, I've got the money. So we had a meeting Monday, and so we really had 4 days to get it together. So I guess, it's the same lesson learned as we found with the Red Line. That is, we have buses that are sitting at the yard, and putting those buses into action in the evening is really, we're just paying the operating costs. We've already got the fixed asset.
So was it a free?
Yeah, and we
it was a free ride. Folks.
Dash was
The Dash was a free ride.
We did operate for free.
MTA is not free.
Yeah. And we had, really our best night, we had almost 13 boardings an hour, which is really not bad. The economic downturn continued all the time that we were running the service. And of course, the other thing is gasoline prices really dropped considerably. Right. So I think both of those had an impact on ridership.
So from all of your perspectives, to me it sounds like a success, but would you say from our expectations of it being started late and all the other issues of gas prices going down instead of up and all that, would you consider it a success?
I think from the input we've received so far that everyone is pretty enthused about the results. You heard Jessica's comments about the Red Line and again the Dash. With 4 days lead time, we were really struggling just to get the service up and running and get some marketing materials out there. But a lot of the marketing really needs to be based on event-based marketing, and the music, the LA Live and other activity centers had already done a lot of their advertising, and so the information about the Dash service was not included as part of those advertisements. So we think that if we have some more time to plan and implement, that with increased marketing, both for the Red Line and for the Dash, that there is potential that we could build on the success that we had during this trial demonstration.
Well, everyone, I said this when we approved it in council, and that, really all of you really did a fabulous job, and I don't think I've ever seen government move as quickly as we did in this one, and I think that's great, and that should be the norm as to how we do it. And so I just want to acknowledge all of you, because that was really important to make it, I think, as I said, a success in that way. I guess the question would be, as you go to next year, and we still have the same challenges, probably even planning for next year, economy, is there any, I look at the MTA, is there any point in time where it becomes self-supporting for that? I don't know what and you may not be able to answer that today, but if you had 2,000 people travel every night and are purchasing the ticket, would that cover the costs associated with it?
No, we'd need quite a few more. We're estimating costs at about $4,500 a night.
$4,500
Yeah.
a night. And how many passengers does that require?
Well, this essentially was about 10%. So take your passengers times 10, so that's about 10,000 people. So
Jessica's going to do that. She's going to get 10,000 next
Well,
year.
actually, what I'm going to do is point out some of the charts that show that in the last hours of service, Metro's doing 417 people, 543, 453, and 577 an hour. So I would hope if we could reach those ridership numbers, we could have a serious conversation about that. The proof's sort of in the pudding on success, and we've already had businesses that have come to us and said, can we do a 2009 pilot? We're in, let's have meetings, let's get this started early,
Yeah.
market it, tell the world about it, and then see how we do.
Great. I
So
think
if it is something that's within the committee's jurisdiction to do, a council member would appreciate just extending it into 2009 and let us get started.
And is that, can we go ahead and instruct that as part of our instructions here at the CLA? I know this is a note and or receive and file the department's report, but can we add a recommendation that says we'd like to ask them to begin to plan for next year's 2000?
I don't think there's any problem with that. My concern would be giving the authority right now, next fiscal year, we don't know what the resources are going to be from the department to do even any of the work that they did now. So I would hope if everyone moved forward and started the program, then they come back once they have the money or some kind of proposal on the table, then we could make a decision. But there's nothing that would stop them from
The
going
general
forward right now.
send the
Yeah.
message, we'd like to do this next year, and on both levels. Okay. Thank you. And Bernard, do you have any questions? And we do have 2 speaker cards. So do you, no questions? Okay. So if you would just let Mr. Arnold Sachs and Eric Richardson. Eric, who's going to raise all that money and get all those people. Mr. Sachs, is that
Yeah.
we or-
Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. What was interesting is listening to the amount of funds. The MTA spokesman said it would cost $4,500 for expenses for the red line to run, and the dash bus was $23,000 to run for approximately the same amount of time, 8 hours. So that's like a little over $7,500 per bus, minus the driver's expense with the drivers on overtime. That's an awful lot of money to spend $7,500 to operate a bus versus $4,500 to operate a train. Just to look into where the expenses actually went, it would be real nice to have a further breakdown on that. And when looking over the reports, it was very disappointing to see that amongst some of the donors were some of the council people. What you do with your private funds is fine, but as a council person, when you start donating funds for specific transit operations, there's transit operations that need money all the time. Are you going to be giving any of the council members going to be giving any money to maintain some of the lines that MTA is considering cutting? They're having hearings this week. Would any of the council members consider donating any money to overturn the cuts when MTA eliminated the quid pro quo for the dash system itself with the daily bus pass? Consider the city as a whole. If you want to make the donations, make it as a private citizen, but if you want to make a donation as a council person, consider it as a whole. Thank you.
Eric Richardson, Blog Downtown. First of all, I just want to thank the council members for their support of what we were able to do with the Dash. The fact that we were able to raise the money so quickly is no reflection on me or on Gilmore Associates per se. It's really about how downtown businesses came together to say, we want to be able to get our patrons and our stakeholders to be able to get around downtown at night. I was particularly excited to see how some of the people who contributed money to this are people who, for instance, have buildings that aren't even online yet. So there was no direct benefit to say, hey, you know, I'm doing this for my bottom line. It was people who really believed in the concept and believed in getting this additional transit for downtown. And so particularly given the timing that we were under, you know, it was fantastic to see the service come together. And I think we learned a lot in terms of routings and in terms of how a service might be structured going forward. And the response that we got from people was definitely one of excitement about the idea of continued nighttime transit. So I look forward to seeing this effort move forward. And I know that I'm not alone when I say that I look forward to seeing us be able to ride transit around downtown all months of the year, not just around the holidays. And so that's definitely something that we will keep working towards, and we thank you for your support of this particular program.
Thank you, Eric. And again, you did do a lot. I know you're being very humble, but it really was appreciated, and it was a good partnership. And I think we can find that it's going to ultimately pay for itself in some ways over time of the sales tax that we get and what the businesses are going to benefit from that. So really glad it worked. Not all pilots actually worked. And again, thank you to the MTA and DOT and Councilmember Weisar's office and bringing back the limelight. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and approve item, receive and file.
Receive and file both of those.
Receive and file, but part of that recommendation be that we support moving ahead to try and do this next year. And start now and help in any way we can. And as we said last time, that we all want to make sure this works. So even if we don't represent downtown, it's very, very important to do that. So, okay. All right, great. Thank you. Next item.
Item number 5.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Can we just go ahead on items 1 and 2? Mr. Labange has joined us as well, and he'll approve item 1 and 2 with us. Thank you all. Okay.
Item number 5 is a Labange Grow motion relative to the prohibition of parking of trailers and semi-trailers on local streets.
I'm not going to try to steal any of Glenn's thunder, but I thought it would be helpful to remind the committee members that which we regulate today and the ability to expand or modify that ordinance reach as Councilmember Labange would like to do. Currently, and for the last 2 years, the city has specifically, thanks to an amendment of state law which gave us the authority to regulate in this area, prohibits the parking of unhitched trailers on any city streets where there is signage to that effect that consist of highways, secondary highways, and collector streets. The ordinance was not originally written, nor were we directed to write it, to include local streets. And the reason for that was because most of the mischief which was being caused in neighborhoods which the statute was designed to reach were the ever unpleasant advertising trailers, which were typically installed on quite high traffic volume streets because they were designed to attract eye traffic. And most local residential streets, we didn't see a proliferation of these advertising trailers. I gather that the motion introduced by Councilman Labange would like to extend the reach to local streets. And in my view, there is no reason why the city cannot choose to do that should they wish to. I do want to point out, however, and it is a great burden on the city, but that state law does not allow us to simply say, we're going to regulate whether it's on a collector street or even if we amend the statute to say a local street without placing a sign somewhere on that street that warns.
Technical question. I've been in other municipalities where you hit their borders and there's one sign, and the one sign says whatever it is. I've been in other municipalities where they have one sign posted per block, so you don't have to post them like street cleaning.
That's probably okay.
Yeah, but I mean, once you come into the town, I know when we started doing enforcement for seat belts, we put a safety sign at every city limit sign. You remember, Glenn? You may be too young to remember, but anyway. I'm just saying, we could put signs everywhere and it just becomes overwhelming. The problem that I'm experiencing, members, is that people race around. And if this is a crime problem, you know, if bad people said, I'm going to put a detached trailer on a street, and if there was a detached trailer on a street and no one, you know, I don't think it should be left there. You know, whether it's advertising, whether it's an Airstream, whether it's a U-Haul. So give us a menu of what we could do to change it to say every street, you know.
We
They're
can,
beating us because they're making us look foolish, meaning the people who are fighting for the neighborhood and their quality of life, shall they making us look foolish because they think we can't get anything done.
Well, some of the frustration, which we all feel, needs to be addressed to the state legislature. But we have had the consistent experience of courts throwing out ordinances and the issuance of citations where there is no signage. There are some statutes where the California Vehicle Code allows cities to regulate on a citywide basis without specific signage, but those are rare. Those are rare.
Because I have the same problem that Mr. Labange has, and I see it across the city, and we brought this up before, and we'd heard the same answer from the city attorney's office. I mean, I think we'd be willing to go to the state legislature and
Get help.
get that help.
I'd be willing to go with you.
Is that the Supreme Court had made a decision, and that even if the state law was changed, we couldn't do it. Is that inaccurate?
I don't think so.
Because, I mean, this is, you know...
Where we have seen litigation in particular, well, first of all, there is a statute in the California Vehicle Code that only allows regulation to cities where there is a sign stating so. And where we've seen the courts eliminate or invalidate statutes are when plaintiffs can demonstrate to the court that they could have wandered onto a street, had no idea that this was prescribed or proscribed, and parked. And the courts have often used the expression, it is a trap for the unwary. So it's kind of like a speed trap, or that's the idea, that it's not fair to penalize people who don't know that this behavior may not be against the law. That's why we put a sign on a block. And to Councilman Labange's concern about street cleaning, there again, state law not only says that in street cleaning you have to have a sign on every street, the state statute requires that every 150 feet you have to have a sign. Now, with respect to other forms of local regulation, the California Vehicle Code does not tell us it has to be every 150 feet, but it does, we think, have to be at least on the block so that you don't issue the ticket or tow the car and then make it pretty easy for someone to come in and legitimately argue to the bench that they had no way of knowing. And part of the reason...
I would, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I would disagree that people who are going to leave an unhitched trailer, whether it is a advertising trailer or a boat or a car, you know, someone's holding a car, they're leaving that, their property in some place that if they don't live in the city and understand, I mean, I just think that's a weak argument for them to make that they didn't know that they couldn't do that.
It's still a state law requirement.
I know.
So we have that challenge.
So based on, sorry, I know you wanted to.
That's
okay.
okay.
It is a legal issue on that. For Mr. Labange's motion, you're saying you can't present this, or you can't prepare an ordinance unless there is a state law change.
No, I'm saying I can change the current law to include local streets.
Okay.
What it will not change, whether it's on a collector street or a local street, is the need for there to be a sign on the block saying no unhitched trailers. Sure.
We don't necessarily have a problem with the trailers, but we do have a significant problem with the tractors. They will park those certain places.
Big trucks.
The big trucks. They'll park them on
Have you said anything
by
yet,
the
Glenn?
park, 4 or 5 deep. They'll park them on Crenshaw. They won't generally have the trailer with them, but it's clear that somebody in the neighborhood doesn't have a place to park, and they'll generally park them on the major streets, but in large numbers, 4 or 5, right behind each other. And we've been chasing that now for the last couple of years.
I think I should probably work with some of your staff in talking about, with Glenn, the tools that we have. It may actually be advisable to install certain parking restrictions, overnight parking prohibitions. There are a variety of tools we have, as frustrating as it is with some of them, to deal with a street-by-street or neighborhood-by-neighborhood problem. And one size obviously does not fit all.
The challenge we have on some of our streets is that you have apartment buildings and people have nowhere to park. And so when you restrict it to 2-hour or no overnight, you are, really going against those people who deserve to park there, because a few people park their vehicles, the trailers there. So it's a both sides, and I know we've done this on Laurel Canyon. I was just asking because I'm not sure if we ended up putting on Laurel Canyon. We did 2-hour restrictions on some parts because we had for sale cars all parking in there.
Right.
But whether or not we've done the trailer hitching things, because we have Thai massage and Shuki Homes, and I'm looking back there because all of these they've moved. Shuki Homes has moved, so we may have taken care of that one there. They just moved to another street that you have to then post and do that. But you're really causing a problem for the person who really should deserve to park in that area and access it for their residence or business.
The city is restricted in ways that seem sometimes inconsistent with our regulation of our own quality of life. But as I've reminded committee members in the past, when it comes to anything that is actually licensed by the state as a motor vehicle, and that includes an unhitched trailer if they have a license plate, our ability to sort of control our own neighborhoods is significantly constrained. And believe me, I share your pain, both from a neighborhood perspective as well as a legal perspective. One more thing I do want to throw into the conversation. There may be large portions of the city of LA where there really is no particular problem with an individual who has this boat trailer parked on the street, as long as they move it every 72 hours, or other forms of unhitched trailers. They're not abusing their neighborhoods. And one of the reasons I think that the policy exists in state law that there needs to be a sign is not just the notice, but to allow cities to sort of pick and choose. So there are obviously problem places where we don't want the advertising trailers or the oversized trucks, but there may be huge swaths of the city where people would like to have their RVs parked, where they would like to have their boat trailer near their house. And even if there was a way to ban it citywide, you may have a lot of communities that would not welcome that particular regulation.
I tried to stay back, but just another tool that we didn't have, and Deputy Chief Carrasco mentioned to me, we do have the license plate recognition, the LPR units, where it does, as Council mentioned, we could go for the 72 hours and do that on a much more regular and based on complaints, based on council offices or the community's request to us that they see a lot of that violation. So we do have other tools right now to help us. It just takes a little bit, I think, maybe more patience from the community for us to be able to do that. Right now we have 8 of those units deployed throughout the city, and we are doing it targeted through a lot of the list of complaints that we have. So, and I think I discussed this with Claire yesterday on some of these things not really being a parking problem. There are really some quality of life issues that cannot simply be solved by a parking sign, which then just keeps moving like running water. So that's all I have to say.
So, and now I know you made the change because we initially had some complaints from people who were used to the 72-hour and moving their cars, and all of a sudden their cars were towed because they knew when you marked them and they knew where you marked them, and now we don't mark them. Is that correct?
It's an electronic digital mark. You have a picture and a timestamp of the vehicle, and yeah, we did that, and unfortunately we got, why are you doing that? There's satellite pictures of our cars out there, and we're like, no, we're just using technology to enforce the existing laws.
Right. So, Mr. Labange, and we do have one public comment card. If I could amend your
Sure.
motion to also ask the CLA to work on state legislation that would allow us to have more local control so that we could do that.
I'd be happy to make suggestions in that regard.
Mr. Sachs?
I second it.
Yes, thank you, Arnold Sachs. Just wanted to point out that Long Beach also has this problem, and they found themselves in a deeper problem because they went with a weight restriction. And so they're finding that people who have those large pickups fall over 4,500 pounds. They're ticketing them, and it's like a private vehicle more or less, but it's over the weight limit. So that would be something that you'd want to stay away from when you're considering these restrictions, because that'll open up a whole new can of worms, I mean, as far as having a weight.
Thank you. Glenn, your presentation was wonderful.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, Glenn.
Thank you.
Unless there was something we missed, Glenn.
Not getting a home run without swinging a bat, Glenn, so.
We walked you on, first. So,
All the way around.
we
He
will
owes me a cocktail.
approve the motion with the amendment to look at state legislation. Okay, so, Mr. Parks.
That brings us to item number 6 on the special meeting agenda. It's a CAO report relative to a contract amendment with Integrated Systems Research Corporation to continue the operation of the automated vehicle locator system in parking enforcement vehicles.
Angela Bruman, CAO. The CAO report recommends approval of the department's request to enter into a contract amendment with Integrated Systems Research Corporation for a period of 4 months at a cost not to exceed $100,000. During the 4-month period, the department will complete their competitive process to select a new vendor for a new contract, and the department intends to come back sometime in April. No additional funds are required for this contract, as we've budgeted for this purpose.
Yes, and I think pretty much we'll try to stay to that. But this is we've gone through a competitive process right now, and the department is in the process. We've received the bids, and we're doing the interviews, and we hope to have a report with a recommendation of a contract to you in April. This has been a long process. The department did everything it could, met with a lot of the other agencies to see if there was going to be a cost savings if other city departments were able to use it. But I think ITGS or another committee, we provided a report that LA's or the parking enforcement is so unique that it needed its own AVL, that it wasn't the same function as the other service or the other vehicles in the city. So we went through extensive research of other cities within California. We even worked with LAPD and their whole CAD system. So we are where we are, and I understand it took a little bit longer than it should have, but I think we're on the right track, and it's a very important project to the department and the safety of our officers, and we ask that you approve this interim contract extension, and we come back with the full contract for the new contract.
A new contract for how many years?
The new contract, I believe, is a 3 years. 3 years plus two, I think, 2 one-year extensions or something like that.
And you know me, I'm kind of a broken record of we had a 5-year contract, and we knew in that 5-year contract, I know you have 6 extensions, but we hope when we go forward that we won't have that the next time. That's just
lessons learned.
So in 5 years from June, we'll look and see if we're already at the new contract in that 5 years. Right, Amir?
Yes.
The only other question I had was that there are other departments, as you kind of alluded to, that have a vehicle license locator system as well, and you said ITGS is looking at. I mean, I think if there's economies of scale or ways in which we can look at ensuring that we are getting the best bang for our buck and programs that are maybe compatible, I guess.
We did that, council member. We did that for a whole year and a half. We went through that process, and it was determined that our use and purpose was so unique that it needed its own contract, that we could have not gone with sanitation or general services or other facilities. ITA was part of that, our task force. We worked with the CAO and I think CLA on that report. So we've done all of that, and that's why we're here, that we're going to go this route for at least this contracting, the new contracting period. And down the line, if technology changes and there's more synergy, I'm sure that we will work towards that.
Good. I just want to make sure we're on the right track, and you feel we're on the right track?
Yes, we're on the right track, and this is something that our officers have been asking, and we want to make sure we provide this technology for their safety as well.
Yeah. How are your tickets divided? Do you have a code that says where the most tickets are given in the city?
Yes, sir.
Your
Rudy
district,
Carrasco, LADOT. Yes, sir. We can provide you with information that would break it down in a geographic GIS system.
Sure.
Geographic information system that would show how the citations are issued and where they're issued.
Yeah, that'd be great if you get that. I think the committee would like to see that, especially the chair of Budget and Finance, right?
Only if there's an increase in revenue.
Only there's an increase in revenue, man. He's coming to the 4th district. Be careful. Okay.
All revenues are down, sir, so.
I know.
That's all
It's
right.
all right.
Okay. That, we will approve that contract extension. Approve the CAO report, is that it? Yeah. We have one general public comment card, Mr. Arnold Sachs.
Lisa.
Yes, Arnold Sachs, I expressed my concern at the last meeting when you authorized the Taylor cab system and the fact that there was a lawsuit filed by one of the drivers, and there was a case heard by the IRS, and it found that the cab companies are violating labor laws by designating the drivers as subcontractors. And so I was wondering, is the city going to take any action? I know that the state took some action against some trucking companies in the Port of L.A. because they falsely labeled their drivers as subcontractors. And with the licensing program, it was described that's going to occur at the ports. It'll be similar to one that occurs with taxi cabs. So based on the fact that the IRS found against the cab companies, what action would the city take, or will the city be enabling the cab companies to operate illegally? Will the cities require that they address the situation that the IRS has ruled on? It's as simple as that. What action will the city take?